Yeah. Well, it must be we have such a small audience because we're in the back room.
That's right.
Great, ready to go. I'll keep an eye on my office.
Great, thanks. Is there any way for people to type in questions for live stream?
There is, but so far I haven't had anybody ever try. So
I've never, when I've been on live stream from
they disabled it.
yeah.
They disabled theirs. We can keep ours up. So far, so, but I'll keep an eye on my office.
Super, thank you.
Changes.
Hi everybody, why don't we get started? Welcome to the last seminar in the series of UNBC's public presentations in the Terrace campus. I'm going to try and stay hugging close to the screen here because we are live streaming across the web. Hi everybody in cyberspace. I know we've got people in Smithers and perhaps Delta and Prince George that promised to check in on this. It's a topic of widespread interest, and I hope to outline some plans that we're undertaking at UNBC in the whole area of agriculture and food systems. And as part of this presentation, I've allocated, I hope, enough time in my notepad here to get some feedback from you to make this a little bit of a community consultation event as well. So by way of introduction, I'm Phil Burton. I'm an associate professor of ecosystem science and management. I'm also the chair of the campus here. My background in this area comes as much from the fact that I grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan as it does from the fact that I'm a professional biologist and a PhD level ecological researcher. Come on in. So you'll see, as I hope to make the point, that a lot of these backgrounds and interests kind of intersect with each other. So you'll see why maybe I'm pushing this agenda a little bit. In terms of the technology, there we go. In terms of an outline, I'll just provide you with some definitions and clarifications about what we are and are not trying to do. And I'll then give you some context both within the university system and northern BC and trends in Western society in general. I'll talk about sort of the range of topics that can be or are encompassed in food system studies. I'll then outline a draft proposal that our ad hoc curriculum committee has been working from, ask for your feedbacks, and tell you where we need to go next. So just the first clarification I would make if relative to the title of this talk, a food security program for UNBC. I'm not talking about trying to make the University of Northern BC campus, either in Prince George or Terrace, self-sufficient when it comes to their own food supply. Although there are some people who really like to advocate the idea of universities as a model community, and in fact there are efforts, even here, we've got plantings made a year or two ago of fruit trees and berry producing shrubs to try and contribute to that local self-sufficiency of the university community when it comes to food supplies. In Prince George, they've gone several steps further with garden and composting facilities and greenhouse and so forth. But we're talking about an education program, not necessarily a self-sufficiency program. So by food systems, we mean agriculture, horticulture, aquaculture, but also the subsistence uses that often don't make it into traditional agricultural programs, especially in the north and in this part of the world. Increasingly, as you go north of 60, you find more and more people dependent on subsistence hunting and foraging and fishing. The other aspects of food systems are post-farming. Okay, they're related to nutritional studies, they're related to food processing, they're related to the huge international trade in the commodities that come from farmers. Now, by sustainable food systems, we're aspiring to identify long-term solutions, solutions that should continue into the indefinite future, looking at, in that typical Venn diagram of sustainability, the social, the economic, and ecological dimensions. But by saying it's a sustainable food system, I don't think we as a program or as a university want to necessarily say that therefore it must be organic or not involve fossil fuels or not involve GMOs. These are all some of the great controversies that are challenging the field of agriculture these days. Food security was the initial term we had for the program and even for this talk. And then one of our committee members pointed out that, well, you know, this actually has more to do with transportation networks and international trade, disaster planning, all sorts of things like that, than it does agriculture necessarily. Although the term is popular and has a lot of purchase, it's really an added dimension beyond food production and food culture. So again, it's an inroad, it's a foot in the door to a whole bunch of other areas, including business and commerce, international studies, trade and transportation. So we're expanding rather than focusing the discussion, I'm afraid. So let's zero in on UNBC's context here. Reflecting our mandate and raison d'etre, yes, we're celebrating the 25th year of the institution being in existence. Thanks to the call for having a university in the North, for the North, we've trademarked the term Canada's Green University. Happy Earth Day, everybody. We've got a strong regional mandate, delivery to places like Terrace and Fort St. John and Quesnel and their outlying regions, as well as Prince George. It is primarily an undergraduate university, although with strong research programs and in fact a growing graduate student representation there. Just as a reminder, Maclean's ranks us #2 nationwide in that category. We're the best in Western Canada. You'd have to go to Mount Allison University in New Brunswick to get a more favorable undergraduate teaching environment. We have strong obligations and commitments to First Nations. We are pretty much, some of our greatest strengths are in educating professionals. That's part of meeting Northern needs. Nurses, teachers, foresters, and so on. We have some international strengths in some areas, such as wildlife and fisheries. People come from all over North America to work with our wildlife biologists. So there are already existing really grassroots movements at UNBC on the behalf of students and individual faculty members to get into the agriculture and food systems business. The Northern Undergraduate Student Society has sponsored a garden near the residences for several years, which has composting. Now it's got a greenhouse as well. There's a very active farmers market on Tuesdays at the Prince George campus that provides a vending opportunity for many of the same people that sell their produce at the regular downtown farmers market. There have been master's projects dealing with food issues. There's been research in a variety of food security and agronomic sorts of questions. Although I noticed maybe they could use a few more English classes. And we've got tremendous expertise in certain areas. We have 3 or 4 soil scientists. Okay, soils as the the core of so much production. We've got plant and animal biologists. We have community geographers and specialists who understand the rural context, the rural culture that the food economy, in fact, often supports or depends on. Another dimension recently, relative to some of my own background work in forestry and dealing with the mountain pine beetle outbreak, is that there's a lot of interest in economic diversification. So the Amanika Beetle Action Community funded agricultural research and would like to see more emphasis on agriculture in central BC in response to what we're now seeing as a projected decline in the forestry sector. So there's a broader food and farm culture throughout northern BC, as there is in most parts of the country, that's not reflected in a university. There's very ongoing and important subsistence traditions, both by First Nations and by settlers, Many people in this part of the world still smoke salmon and count on it for their winter sustenance. There's foraging for berries and mushrooms. There's household and kitchen gardens that are really part of our pioneer tradition, and it's often a skill and a series of a set of knowledge that's being lost from one generation to the next. But in addition, there are large agricultural economies, such as this canola field in the Peace River country, ranching in the Chilcotin, hay and cattle production in the Vanderhoof area, a variety of dairy, livestock, and vegetable production in the Bulkley Valley. It is part of the mainstream economy in selected pockets throughout the region as well. Another dimension is again what I would call the cultural importance. We see agricultural fairs in many of those same communities. We see farmers markets. At last count, there are 14 regular weekly farmers markets during the summer season along the Highway 16 and 97 corridors north of Williams Lake, from Prince Rupert to Valemont. There's commercial fishing, fish packing, and to a certain degree shellfish and crustacean harvesting off the north coast. Again, being land-based, we tend to forget that the fishing industry is a food industry. It's not all about farming, right? And again, back to the wild foods and subsistence uses. There are lots of berries and mushrooms that have gone through various phases of either hobby or commercial harvesting. At one stage, the pine mushroom, this is a bolete, not a pine mushroom. I can never seem to find a pine mushroom. Pine mushrooms contributed some 130 or is it 170 million dollars a year during the height of that export market to Japan. Prices have come down since, but a lot of people still enjoy foraging for mushrooms just for their own use or for a little bit of cash. I also notice on the highway in Thornhill now there's a buying station for fiddleheads. Okay, the ostrich fern fiddlehead, recognized as a spring delicacy throughout North America. And that wild food use, we're very primitive in the degree to which we have developed and exploited it. In other parts of the world, this is a berry buying station, I think it was in Finland, where the product of wild lingonberries, wild blueberries, wild mushrooms quickly makes it to restaurants and to stalls at the Helsinki harbor market, for example. In northern BC, about 15 years ago, a co-op was made to make jam from wild blueberries and huckleberries. It's in a bit of a hiatus now. But these opportunities have never really been fully developed, partly due to the lack of expertise or entrepreneurial guidance or capital funding, who knows what, but there's undeveloped potential in this area. And one of my prime interests is because it does intersect with forest management. And then of course there's a lot of ancient and not so ancient, recent knowledge that we are only now, in fact, beginning to appreciate and more fully understand. It needs further conservation, passing on, and research. For example, throughout eastern North America, Native Americans would plant maize, corn with beans, a legume that would fix nitrogen, plus squash, a vine cover that would keep the weeds out. And traditionally they would plant a fish under it to complement the full nutritional background to that agricultural system. And there's increasing interest now today in the permaculture movement and intercropping to come up with and copy similar ways of managing food production rather than in large monoculture fields. You perhaps can't see it too well in this picture. This is in northern England, where dealing with a cold, harsh climate was accomplished by building a wall, a hollow wall, that has chimneys in it. Okay, during cold spells, they would keep fires going in the wall to augment the growing season. And here is an esplanade pear tree growing in northern England by, not through greenhouse production, but just by having a reflective wall that could have supplemental heat. So maybe there are modern equivalents we can play with in this northern climate, because climate is one of our big challenges, right? So another national, provincial context is really minimal and declining, I would say, governmental support for non-industrial agriculture. We've seen the closure of agricultural research stations. There used to be one in Smithers, there used to be one in Prince George. Just recently they've closed one in Kamloops, have a certain ranching industry. There's an increasing focus on agribusiness and the export economy with minimal extension and advisory capacity. The province still recognizes it as a need. I don't see Tara here. She arranged for our regional agrologist, John Stevenson, is based in Smithers, to come out and give talks on a few things. But this was over a year ago. In the past, the regional agrologist would give talks like this, once a month in different communities. Soil sampling, variety selection, composting, increasing the length of your growing season. So now we have one person, that covers the area from Burns Lake to Atlan, and is just too stretched, right? So in response, we see a lot of grassroots efforts to fill the gap, to keep the conversation going, to share information. Food and gardening is on the mind of many people. It's in the news, it's being talked about. I think almost every issue, every second issue of Northward magazine that goes all across the Highway 16 and 97 North Corridor has a food topic, such as many of these that were taken from. There's a great interest in the 100-mile diet, decreasing the energy costs that go to sourcing your food. There's interest in community-supported agriculture, CSA, in which you commit to a bundle per week or per every 2 weeks for delivery of produce to your door, and that gives a surety that a farmer can use to put in a crop and hire help to manage it and harvest it. There's interest in conserving and reinvigorating heritage varieties. We often have seedy Saturdays as seed exchanges and sales of just grower to grower information and the sharing of seed stock. Home gardens, community gardens continue to be of interest, although we're faced with the economic context that the cheap food that we can get from supermarkets has, in the case of many families, many households, reduced the apparent need to keep that knowledge, that tradition alive of home gardening. I would extend the locavore, the local food movement, even to craft breweries, totally a growing sector in terms of food utilization. We see restaurants often highlighting their locally sourced fish and produce, and growing interest in nutrition and food security. From a nutritional perspective, I think it was one of our previous speakers who once said that he found that women were much more conscious of having good quality nutrition and being careful about their diet than men are. But we're being dragged along as well to really give consideration to, are there pesticide residues? Are we getting the correct complement of amino acids if we're going vegetarian, and so forth. And then finally, food security is literally an issue in this part of the world where we have one highway corridor in and out that in the past has often been closed for days at a time due to landslides or bridges out. So, the whole idea of the extent to which our supermarkets alone will provide long-term surety is not at all a given. And it's a topic that is showing up in the research and conservation and ecological literature a lot as well. There are a lot of environmental impacts associated with modern society that affect agriculture. There are many impacts of agriculture that people often don't consider. For example, and here's the grist for the mill of discussion. let's talk about the trade-offs of going with organic agriculture versus the use of fertilizers and pesticides. Because of the lower yields, a larger area of land is needed if you're going to cultivate and produce the same amount of crops. So depending on what part of the world you're talking about, you know, what is the greater damage being done. So there's land use considerations and conflicts. It's an issue of economic diversification, one of the many bricks that can provide for a resilient community, especially if we're, you know, getting out of forestry, or if certain mega projects don't go ahead, what are we going to have as in terms of an economic fallback? It's also a big part of local or regional and group identity. You know, we in this part of the world are, for example, the Chilcotin is cattle country, right? It's ranchers and cowboys, right? The Skeena, we are a fish culture, right? Both the Aboriginal and the settler communities. When I moved to Terrace, people said, "Oh, you'll love the fishing." That's what people move to Terrace for, right? So the fish and being able to eat fish is a big part of being here. And again, as I indicated, a lot of controversy. Genetically modified organisms, are they good? Are they bad? Should they be labeled? Is it only transgenics? Are some chemicals acceptable if you've got a pest, others aren't? Hormone use in animals, antibiotic use. What about our total dependence on fossil fuels for heating or for cultivation? What are some alternatives, and where's the right balance? So there's lots of material here, is what I'm saying, for discussion and education, and to challenge our thinking. And my point is that it's like a spider web that permeates all of society, really, our connection to food and its production. And that then leads us to, well, what is our educational goal? Is it just to challenge young people to think more broadly, to have an educated citizenry? I think there's certainly lots of opportunity there with food as a theme. Are we trying to equip the home gardener or hobby farmer with a few more tricks, a little bit more deeper understanding? Or, as would seem to be the emphasis these days, are we trying to train people for employment, to give them career options? Or is it just to, you know, respond to the demand that's out there? Regional service. Conversely, are there some unique or niche programs that we can offer in food systems that we do not find elsewhere in the country? So I would say the answer is a yes to those first three, and a maybe not unresolved issue to the other, and I'll get to that a little later. I think we can do all three, but it takes a little bit of imagination, and this is where our committee spent several months exploring the topic of how can we do all that. Let's see where my next slide is. Okay, so we decided to start from point 3, that based on our emphasis on professional education, let's work from the curriculum designed to designate a professional agrologist. Okay. So the P.Ag designation is one that is managed by the BC Institute of Agrology. So looking at their requirements, we find that we are talking about a 4-year bachelor's degree with foundational courses in the sciences and maths, some background in genetics, economic statistics is recommended, and then a whole slack of courses related to the natural sciences or resources that directly relate to agrology, which is very broadly defined, it turns out. Cultivation, production, improvement of plants or animals, classification, management, use, conservation of ecosystems or land, and then, you know, a number of other options for specialty or general courses. And this is finalized with 2 years interning or articling with a mentor. So it turns out that many of our existing students already would qualify to be professional agronomists or agrologists. Oh, I had a different slide there. but without that food emphasis, okay? Primarily because of their work with land management, forestry, soils, wildlife, they would have perhaps an area of emphasis that is more closely related to reclamation, land reclamation, or to wildlife management. But they would still be qualified for that designation. So how can we bend that over into a little bit more of a food focus? If we look at other universities, well, across the country, there's long histories around North America of serving both that commercial agriculture need, household horticulture, and human ecology, or what used to be called home economics programs. In the United States, land grant universities were specifically set up with that mandate in the late 1800s. Many of our colleges and universities in Canada, this one is the Nova Scotia Agricultural College in Truro, are over 100 years old. And all of their curricula, if we look for guidance, are very similar to what we just looked at for the BCIA, courses in biology, chemistry, a specific one in agriculture typically, also ecology, soil science, plant science, animal science, crop science, and some local food or agriculture system, some kind of math, economics, or business. Okay, so this is filling out a little bit more. What does it take to be a professional in the field of agriculture? Then the balance is made up of electives or technical specialties or professional skills. So that's where you would get into some of the more exotic things like agricultural engineering or genetics or biotechnologies, communications, statistics. So there are a lot of these across the country already as part of the issue. Almost every province has its history of an agricultural college or an agricultural program at its major universities. And we're seeing that there are trends there, including declining enrollment. Declining enrollment, but drilling down a little deeper, we see there's a correlation. There's increasing emphasis on the technology, the business, the industrial sides of agriculture in those traditional programs at the big universities. And that's where the enrollments are down. We're also seeing fewer students with a personal or familial background on farms or in rural areas, but a growing interest amongst urban students. They often say that no, they're into alternate agriculture, alt-ag. Okay, and this is recognized in some recent publications in the education literature. So we see aspiring farmers or food aficionados with, in fact, no direct tie to a land base, with no handed down knowledge from their parents. So within BC, we see Kwantlen in Richmond actually taking advantage of this. We see UBC and their South Farm at the Point Grey campus taking advantage of this, attracting the urban student. And they're apparently doing quite well. They can get a BSc in applied science, Bachelor of Applied Science, and with sustainable agriculture as a major. So that's tapping sort of that urban alt-ag interest right now, where the huge population base is. They've got 1 or 2 million people to draw upon. In terms of provincial investment in BC, the province seems to be directing its investment in agriculture to the University of the Fraser Valley in Abbotsford, where they're again in the midst of that large Fraser Valley dairy and horticulture community. So there is an active economy there, and we see similar trends around the country. Olds College in Alberta seems to be picking up some of the slack, some of the student FTEs, full-time equivalents, that used to go to the University of Alberta. So it's the smaller, nimbler, newer universities with alternative directions that seem to be on the move. So, lessons we have taken from this at UNBC is that there is good agreement with our mandate and our tradition of educating professionals. It looks like we're dealing primarily with a science degree, much to the chagrin of one or two members on our committee who would prefer to emphasize sort of the community or social aspects of agriculture, but there's room for that too. To work as a professional, it does take a science degree here. There's a lot of overlaps with a couple of programs in our existing Bachelor of Science program in Natural Resources Management because of that emphasis on things like biology and soils and so forth. So as I mentioned, UNBC students can currently qualify for PAG, the designation, but with emphasis on soils, reclamation, or wildlife. This is one of my former students working on a mine reclamation project out at Houston. And finally, in looking around, I think it's fair to say that we can't compete nationally, or I would dare say even provincially, with some of the other more well-established and well-funded programs. So perhaps our best approach is to meet the regional needs and to try and tack it on to something that's already in place as a secondary interest. So a secondary interest in the university undergraduate education world is called a minor. So we're going to start with a proposal to have sustainable food systems as a minor rather than a major declared area of focus within the BSc in Natural Resources Management program, where currently people might declare a major in forest ecology and management, for example. Likewise, people can declare a major in biology, wildlife and fisheries, because there's a lot of course overlap there, and still have the opportunity to focus. And here's where we come back to that niche program. Okay, we are dealing with sort of northern climate issues, so long distances to market if you're trying to sell to the market more than a local market, and in this whole use of the harvesting of wild foods. Even there, we are not alone though. Okay, Yukon College in Whitehorse is talking about similar programs. University of Alaska in Fairbanks has similar programs. So, you know, I think we do have to emphasize the serving of our local populations. And if we do that well, then maybe, and we build it, they will come. Maybe we'll get some outsiders in as well. So I think the key to moving forward on that is, and this is where I hope to get some feedback from you, is to have a practical component that we can also sell and market and deliver as individual modules to the public. Take and have those scattered throughout the region, taking advantage of our different regional strengths and diversity when it comes to food production and culture. Let me show you what I mean. Working through the whole proposed minor, a minor should have 7 or 8 courses of a given focus area. So of those, we might need only 4 new courses. Okay, a food 101 sort of course, an introduction to agriculture, the history of agriculture, something in crop science or agronomy, you know, one step up from just basic plant science, something in animals or livestock, and then an overall capstone course on, you know, where does this fit into the whole world, global food systems, food security. Then they would have to make sure they have soils, some kind of environmental issues course, and what else? Something on a First Nations approach. Again, if we try and emphasize that spin of hunting or foraging, in, subsistence uses, and an environmental and professional ethics course. And so there we are up to our 8 classes. And then others are part of the major or their electives. And then let's require 3 credits, the equivalent of 1 class, to be taken in 3 of these modules. Okay, and here's our connection to the region and also to continuing studies, outreach to bring in the general public. You know, it's that anyone in this room could take a class or 5 classes of these 1 credit courses, which would maybe only be 12 hours each. Okay, but if a full course for 3 credits is 36 hours, you could do, 3 of these individual 12-hour courses to make up that requirement. But by the same token, a 12-hour course is a weekend class, right, in terms of face-to-face instruction time. So you might come into a classroom like this for a Friday evening to get some theory or background on a particular topic, like composting or pest management. And then you'd go out to fields or gardens or orchards for hands-on discussion and examples with a local expert, a local practitioner, and then maybe be required to submit a little 5-page paper or something for evaluation by the end of the day. I'm not sure. These things are always up to the individual instructors. But the idea is that it would be open to the general public, with or without university credit, and it could be co-taught by local practitioners and a university instructor to maintain the standards for university credit. So, I mean, you can think of a dozen or 2 topics that each of our regional communities excels in terms of their connection to the land or the sea, but to food. Right? And we probably all know some real experts, some real expertise in areas such as shellfish or tree fruits or vegetable production, managing livestock, poultry, greenhouses, grains, oilseeds, and pulses are big in the Northeast, beekeeping, even how to quarter, skin, and haul moose out of what could be a course offered at Dease Lake, right? And this would interface obviously with things like First Nations programs as well. All sorts of urban and marketing issues and challenges, even mechanization issues. So, those are the sorts of courses which I would hope to see continuing studies making available to both general public and to students interested in getting such a degree. So here's where I would like your feedback on a couple of issues. One is, does that combination of formal university-directed education mixed with community-based short courses, does that seem feasible to you? Comments, thoughts?
I was wondering about the Master Gardener program.
Yeah.
I think it's still at the Prince George campus.
Yeah, it's still available.
Would that be the type of model that you would be considering?
We specifically discussed that and debated it, and the conclusion from the member of our committee who was in charge of organizing that, John Orlowski at the EFL greenhouse in Prince George, thought it was too broad and too elementary reason really to constitute a large component of any such degree. It would if people had already taken as students these other courses at the 1 through 300 level, they would already have all that material in the Master Gardener program. On the other hand, if they just did the Master Gardener program, they would still not get the diversity of different places or food dimensions that we're trying to encourage. So that actually was taken off the table. Yeah.
What would be the cost for courses offered to the public?
The cost?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, we haven't gotten that far.
Okay.
I'm still trying to sell this to our continuing studies people.
But I mean, in your best estimate,
yeah.
Like $100, $500?
More than 100, less than 500. Yeah, that'd be my guess. But,
in Hazelton right now, there's a young group of people that are offering a cod building workshop. I think they're charging $160
okay.
a day. But You know, I really like the idea of the university being involved in continuing studies program for the general public,
Yeah.
because I think instead of the university being here, it's more of a community university,
Yeah.
and I would really like to see that involvement more. The thing that triggers me a little bit is, oh, I got to write a 5-page essay.
Sorry, I just pulled that out of the air.
I don't
young
want to do
professor.
that.
Yeah, okay.
I did enough university in the past, but I would love to take a course
Yeah.
on a 1-day course on soil testing, or getting your garden moving or whatever.
You know, the challenge there is if it is for university credit, there has to be a grade and evaluation. And it has to be more than just showing up. So we'll leave that to the instructors to sort out. But you know, if you are interested in it not for the degree, then you wouldn't take the assignment, option. There was another comment over here.
Oh, I was just wondering about the actual the criteria to get the minor.
Mm-hmm.
Why not have or why not include an economics course?
Mm-hmm.
Was that? It just seemed that was
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, and that's a good suggestion, and people can take that as part of their general electives, or we can switch this around. So
So are
you know,
there food and like natural resource economics courses available at UNBC?
there are a couple of options. Microeconomics at the 100 level is really a very theoretical course.
Yeah.
Okay, then there's an introduction to Canadian business, which sort of covers way more than what we're talking about in terms of farm management. There's another course in economics called valuation systems, which is kind of interesting and close to the mark. But the resource economics course is currently a forestry economics course at the 400 level. Okay, so we have to find something in there that is business relevant, has some economic theory, but is not too advanced as your one course, in business, commerce, and economics. And I'll take a note of that. I mean, this proposed progression has my own spin and the fingerprints of other members of the committee on there as preferred topics. For example, the subsistence topics and First Nations use. It could just as easily have that economic brick in the wall. But it's always tough to, when working with such little space, to say what is required and what is recommended, because that required window is as small as 7 or 8 courses. So it's part of the negotiating process, but also the practicalities of what do we have on the books. Let me add another challenge here. UNBC is currently in a process of program review and looking at all the courses on the books. And I've been told that it's not a time to project and propose new courses unless some old ones are going to be dropped or canceled. Our provincial block fund is decreasing at the same time as the university is dealing with flat enrollment, since all of these other university colleges became degree granting universities. And the faculty is progressing through the ranks, so that we're expecting higher pay. So there's less money to invest in new instructors and programs, especially if the demand isn't demonstrated. So it's a gamble.
What would have the demand to be for them to consider like new courses?
Well, that leads to my next question to people. Do any of you see yourselves or your children or grandchildren, nieces, nephews, neighbors as actually signing up for, not necessarily a 4-year degree, but if going to university, to take on agriculture or food as a topic that they would sign up for? Do you know anyone who would take this minor or want it to be made into a major, would like to become a professional hydrologist? One maybe? Okay. You know, it's really hard to demonstrate.
I would be interested, but you know, to tell you the truth, I'm practical. Like
Yes.
I want to have practical indication in terrace or in the region.
Yep.
Like, you know, like all what you presented would give you some theory, and we theoretically produce some people who may tackle food sustainability.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that would be possible, that we would take on the ground some kind of project, and
Mhm.
student can realize minor doing a project,
Mhm.
let's say community support agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of earn minor on the ground. You know,
Mhm.
not, I don't know if that could be connected, because I understand there is some educational component must be in, but I think it's really very essential for our region that we have this practicality and local implications, not
Yeah.
only theory.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's part of the reason why I did want to see some practicum in there. And it's partly because the interest is coming from urban students who often don't really know the practical side of things, or in fact even the sacrifice it takes if you're going to be a farmer. If these people think that they might end up in an agricultural lifestyle, it's a big commitment that's not 9 to 5, right? So they literally have to get their hands dirty. But I take your suggestion that one of the modules, at least, or an option for that practical experience could be a project. And it's interesting, I heard a similar recommendation at a workshop I went to last week, talking about how to kickstart innovation and entrepreneurship within the Northwest and the community. And there too the suggestion was made to, well, you need to have students link up with businesses and practitioners to work through a real world case study, not just from textbooks, right? So I see a common theme there. Yeah.
So if a student was interested in the PA,
Yes.
there's the 2-year mentoring post for your
Yes.
degree. Does that have to be mentoring 2 years with somebody who has that designation?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so you had mentioned that there is one person in Smithers. Do you know how many people in this area have that designation?
No, I don't know. Many people who end up working for the Ministry of Forests, if they didn't have a forestry degree, get the PAG designation. Steve, I don't know if you work with any of them in your office. People who are not RPFs, any PAGs there? There's a number of them in Smithers and in Nanaimo, I know, just because they didn't actually take a forestry degree but are now working in that area. For example, myself, I'm an RP Bio. I came through the biology stream, but I do have all the course requirements to be a PAG if I wanted to. There are some around, and I think a directory exists.
Yes, so a concern I would have if I was contemplating this is having like a database of
Yep.
people with that designation who would be willing to mentor for 2 years. Or
That's right.
maybe 1 year and you go to another person for another year. But and so would I have to go to leave Terrace and you'll have to leave wherever
No.
to do that?
No, I think that mentoring might even be done remotely through submission of reports and commentary or something. I'm not sure. But yeah, there is. It's not an employment mentoring. It's not like a true apprenticeship. It's just somebody guiding you through your professional practice during your weekdays.
Getting you ready for the exam.
Yeah.
I have some online questions and
Oh,
comments
okay.
around it, so you just sort of look behind you there.
Oh,
and
look at
go through,
that.
and I can scroll down. to
Oh, it's
see-
here. Okay. Exclude cash at this point, meaning money. Yeah, we're costing it out, Kirk. So we'll see where that lands. Michelle says, looking at program requirements, there should be an emphasis on learning about local ecosystems, ethnobotany, and local traditions. That would make it unique. Okay, so that might be that niche market I was talking about. And in fact, one of the things I suggested should be a required course. Serena, I love the idea, be interested in seeing interest level from students. A lot of students active in food issues on the Prince George campus, more food system oriented. some on-farm practicum aspect for the program. Again, repeating what you said, lots of opportunities, how to get more support in moving this forward. Oh my goodness, there's a large.
Yeah, you got a lot today.
Okay, Agris says, great location for a field school in Quick. I think that elementary school has been sold or taken off the market. They're having a discussion amongst themselves. Soil research happening in the Bulkley Valley, farm soil test kits, field days, workshops. Kirk asked, what about teaming up with the colleges on this? Greenhouse work at CNC. Oh, he meant caches, not cash. So there's two colleges at the UNBC. One is the College of Science and Management, CSAM, and the other one is the College of Arts, Social and Health Sciences. So there is that social science dimension to it as well. Oh, that was John Stevenson in Smithers there. So we got his workshop showcased. So hi John and Serena and Michelle and Kirk, thanks for tuning in. And we're going to count on people like you as champions and on the various associations really to, I think, to answer the question of what demonstrates demand. Okay, if there are public associations, the Peace River Forage Producers, the Greater Terrace Food Association, the Farmers Market Association of BC. You know, there are dozens of these various producer and activist groups that I think we'll be tapping for support. But then we hope it has to follow through with people registering. So I think our foot in the door is going to be the practical courses. So I'll be in Prince George later this week and next, trying to twist the arms of the continuing studies people to say this is a business they should begin. Why don't we move on? We're almost at the end of the hour. Can we go back to the other screen, please? Alex, thanks. And thanks for all of those of you who typed in. Keep the conversation going. So our next step is, like I say, I think let's develop and deliver some of those continuing studies courses. It's another set of hurdles if we want to have them granted credit, and I'm looking into that. We'll try and have those proposed 4 new courses on the books. That seems to be a minimum that we can get away with to really cover the foundations of agriculture. And we'll make sure that is in the mix as the new provost comes in and hopefully spearheads a program review and program development. And then for each of those courses, and we're starting with Food 101, we're developing course outlines, trying to identify instructors. And then it's a matter of advertising and promoting, making sure it's known in our communities. And once we have that first year or two of a track record to expand it to province-wide or nationwide. So here's just sort of some of the processes we have to go through. We have an ad hoc curriculum committee, which needs to be officially designated. We're housing it currently within the College of Science and Management and the Ecosystem Science program, but we do have to consult not only with the other programs, the other college, but also the registrar's office. We're proposing a new prefix in the books called a food course, right, as opposed to a forestry course or a biology course. So that has to be approved. Then it has to go through the Senate Committee on Academic Affairs, SCAF, which makes its recommendation to the Senate, which then the registrar's office implements for it actually to show up in the calendar and online for students to register for. So we are here and trying to decide, are we ready to go here yet? Okay, so we're probably talking the earliest as 18 months from now, whatever it is, 15, 16 months from now, if we want to have September 2016. But we have had a test run of what more or less would be similar to either Food 101 or Food 400. And that is last fall, Bill McGill gave a global food systems talk. Unfortunately, it was not adequately promoted, or it didn't show up in the books, or our advisors didn't know about it. They only had 3 students in it. But it did address some of these big questions in terms of what is our current food situation worldwide? So not the local side of things, but the global context. What are the connections between food, population, income, technology, and the environment? What are constraints and opportunities in food systems related to the environment? Is things getting more globalized, more localized? What is the true food crisis? Is it obesity or hunger? I like that one. What is our security of access to nutritious, affordable food? So those are the big questions, right? So that's not about the practical skills now. This is making liberal arts and science students think broadly, and that's a big part of our goal as well. Just a closing shot that again, this is on a lot of people's minds. It's on a lot of activity schedules. Just at UNBC, we recently had a presentation from a researcher, Dr. Connie Nelson from Lakehead, who is director of their Food Security Research Network, a small northern university in Ontario, right? Kurt Galch out of Telco, I believe, has a monthly newsletter, Just Farmers, an informal newsletter about farming issues. Here's Serena's presentation on her research. Congratulations, Serena. I trust you passed your master's defense last week. I haven't heard from you since then. So trusting that's all going well, and that in fact you are able to hang out your shingle as an agricultural consultant starting this summer. Large research questions looking both historically and over broad areas into the impacts and implications of human land use in agriculture. So it's really a hot topic, a really exciting topic. We're suffering from small populations in this area, limited government support, but hopefully the energy of individuals and consumer and producer groups can maybe provide that lobbying to get something like this off the ground. Thank you very much for your attention, everyone, and if people want to stick around, it is the end of the hour, but I'd be glad to take any more questions or comments. Tell your friends and neighbors. Have them send me an email if they're really keen on helping us champion it. Yes?
Do you know of any studies where they compared soil condition, like for example organic gardening, industrial or organic farming, industrial farming, and if that had any effect on nutrients?
I think they are out there, but I haven't investigated it. I would ask Dr. Google. I think it has been a common theme of discussion. And it's often the case that any individual study will only look at a limited area of impact. For example, for many years, the use of Roundup, of glyphosate, was thought to have minimal impact except on aquatic organisms, fish and amphibians. But the more they look, they're finding impacts on bacteria and mycorrhizal fungi, which also contribute to the health of the soil and the ecosystem. So, research is rarely open and shut. It's often an ongoing set of studies. And to answer your question, it may have different answers in heavy clay soils than it does in light sandy soils, you see. So that's the sort of assignment that we would give somebody a 20-page essay instruction to investigate. Anything else online there?
A couple of comments, but doesn't look like anything.
Okay, looks like Serena's coming out to Smithers. Safe travels, everybody. I'm going the other way. I'm going to Prince George tonight. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for coming. Bye.